We are recording this for anyone who isn't able to attend at the moment. It will also be on the staff portal, CTE websites for Fayette County Public Schools. So hello, everyone. This is our CTE Summit for October on CTE and EL strategies. And on the left, you know, our CTE team, and we also have some special guests with us today. I'll pause for a moment and let them introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Latanza Garvin. I am one of the new EL instructional specialists, working mainly with middle schools and high schools.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rose Santiago. I'm the director of the Multilingual Gifted and Talented Department. So my department covers, besides gifted and talented English language learners, refugee, migrant, world languages, translation, interpretation, dual immersion programs, and multilingual family ambassadors. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite, team.
Thank you all for your collaboration. So today's summit is over EL strategies. So we're going to talk a little bit about some Fayette County demographics, the Elevation platform, some strategies, and a Tates Creek High School spotlight for some strategies they are using. And Rachel, will you cover our success criteria for us, please?
Sorry, pause. All right, so we're going to learn how CTE teachers can incorporate EL strategies into their lessons so that we can increase student achievement. That's our main goal, right? So we're going to look at our unique challenges and opportunities faced by ELs in CTE. We're going to explore those strategies for creating those inclusive learning environments and support the cultural diversity and linguistic diversity of ELs. Look at those practical approaches for integrating language development, and look at best practices and strategies to empower ELs and CTE pathways. All right.
Okay, I think before we start, it's important to look at some important terms and acronyms. Oftentimes we hear EL, we want to make sure everyone understands that that refers to English learner. And that's divided into also newcomers. You have newcomers that have been to the country, come to the country, they've only been here a year. You also have LTELs, which refers to long-term English learners. Those are students who have been in the program for 5 or more years. RFEP, these are reclassified fluent English proficient students. That means they have scored a 4.5 on the access test and have exited the program, but we monitor them 2 years after they have exited. Language proficiency refers to how well a person can use a language. And as I mentioned before, our students take the access test, which determines their language proficiency, and it measures their levels in speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And those levels go from a 1 to a 6. And a 4.5 is an exit. So before we dive into some strategies, just look at some demographics of our district. And I pulled some of these numbers from Elevation that we will look at a little bit later on. The total number, and I pulled these numbers a while back, so I'm sure they have increased by now, over 3,000 active ELs in middle and high school. There's about almost 1,500 LTELs, long-term English learners in middle and high school. And our RFEP students, there are 1,272. One of the most striking things about our student population is that they are linguistically diverse. You can see that there are over 113 different languages spoken in our district, Spanish being the top language, and Swahili being the second. Our district's large and growing number of English learners brings rich diversity to our classrooms. However, this also means that many students are navigating both language learning and technical skills at the same time. So I want you all to think about and put this in the chat. What are some of the unique challenges that you have seen that English learners face when it comes to CTE? So let's take about a minute and put that in the chat. Any unique challenges that English learners face? Yes, industry jargon, knowledge about basic computer use. Absolutely. So you all are spot on with that. Instructions are often provided verbally, and the students struggle to grasp. I know when I get some instructions on how to put something together, if it doesn't have a picture, I struggle as well. I need visuals with that. You're exactly right. Very good. Would anyone like to share out any response?
I want to share an experience that I recently had. I was at a conference, and at this conference, there were two people talking about EL strategies, and they started the meeting with one of the presenters speaking in Spanish, and she went 3 or 4 slides speaking in Spanish, and we're all like, question marks above our head trying to figure out what is going on. And the point was to show us what the experience was like for an EL student. And I found that very eye-opening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oftentimes our students are sitting in classrooms all day long and they're hearing English and there's no support to help them access or understand anything that's going on. But there are strategies that will help those students access the language and at least be able to complete a task or an activity. Okay. Thank you all for those responses. Right. So it's extremely important to understand your students' backgrounds. Learning, sometimes they have different educational experiences. We have students that, especially coming into high school, maybe their last educational experience was in 2nd grade. Sometimes they have completed high school as well. So they come from a diverse array of experiences. And as I mentioned before, they're navigating both language acquisition. So they're trying to learn language and the technical vocabulary at the same time. And understanding those proficiency levels. When we get into elevation, I will show you how you can see your students' proficiency levels. Okay. Considering the facts that have been shared, what strategies are you currently using to support your English learners? So what are you currently doing in your classrooms to support English learners? Feel free to respond in the chat or unmute yourself and to share in the group. Visual vocabulary. Right, so that's the reason why we're here. We're here to learn about the strategies that we can use in our classroom, asking other students. Oh, yes, very good. Having a peer mentor. Other students certainly help in the translation of the content of what the activity is required for the students to do. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple of common strategies and show you some visuals of how they can be used. You all mentioned before visual aids and demonstrations, diagrams, photos, videos, those all support English learners in accessing the content. Pre-teach industry-specific vocabulary prior to completing a task. Pre-teach that vocabulary to the students, so when they encounter that vocabulary during the steps of having to complete whatever they need to complete, then they will have experienced that vocabulary ahead of time. Break down tasks into manageable chunks, ordering the steps of a process. So I know when I'm trying to bake something or teach my daughter how to bake something, I have to say, okay, first you got to do this. You break it down into smaller parts so that students don't have to encounter everything at one time. And that can often be quite stressful. Provide hands-on learning opportunities. Sometimes it's easier to do than just to listen, right? So provide opportunities so students can participate. They can do the activity that is required. Model. I can't say that enough. Show students what they need to do. Not just tell them, show them what to do. And I'm sure many of you all do that, but a lot of times people forget that, hey, let's show them what the expectation is. If they have to complete or they have to produce some sort of product, show them what it looks like. Show them the end product so that they know what the expectation is. Okay.
Just sidebar, this sounds like stuff that's good for all kiddos.
Absolutely. And I often say this, what's good for EL students is good for all students. We have to change the language of, oh, I have to do all this for my EL students. Whatever you do for your EL students works for everyone. So the strategy role play, I thought this was pretty neat. This is a physical therapy role play. So have students work in pairs, identify one person as the physical therapist and one person as the client. So you can have scenario cards, especially in situations where there's a client and then there's the patron. So have students have the opportunity to interact and role play using the vocabulary. Provide sentence starters so they know what to say. We can't assume they know what to say. We tell them what to say, and using that word bank that you can also use in a word wall too. Okay. An interactive word wall. Select relevant vocabulary that is used in your particular area. Include the visuals and the definitions. When I say interactive word wall, it's just not words thrown on the wall. It's words that students can actually use when they're having to complete a task. Organize them by theme or process. Incorporate multilingual labels. Make sure that they're interactive and dynamic. And I have an example on the next slide. I thought. So this is, I remember having to take sewing in high school and learning the parts of a sewing machine. But here it's interactive. You can see that there are cards that are folded in which students could probably have a definition. So they can see the word, definition, and also, what else do you notice there? If you take a look at that word wall, interactive word wall, what else do you notice?
It's in both languages, 2 languages?
Absolutely, it's in both languages. And it looks like students had a hand in creating that word wall. Okay. So we're going to go back to that word wall, but I want you to look at, not yet, though, let's
Never mind.
go to the next slide. So these strategies were shared in the district just as a reference for teachers. Teach academic language explicitly, model application of academic language in context, build background knowledge and link instruction to prior learning, provide nonverbal supports, gestures, facial expressions, intonation, visual representation of academic concepts, reinforce oral language with written cues, adapt pace of instruction, provide scaffolds, make use of reference materials. So what I'd like for you to do is go back and look at that word wall. How many of these strategies listed on there hit the 9 instructional strategies that were shared by the district?
Okay, we're gonna study this,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll go back to the, we'll go
Yes.
back to the strategy. Y'all tell me when you're ready to go back. Got a thumbs up from Lynn.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Bam.
How many do you see? Which ones do you see?
Definitely number 5.
Uh-huh.
And then 6,
Mm-hmm.
8.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, I've heard from teachers that say, oh, this is too difficult. This is too hard to do that. But this isn't, this is things that these are things that and strategies that you could do for all your students, that you should do for all your students. So that students understand the expectations, they have access to the vocabulary, it builds their language. We don't want students, any students, just to sit in classroom and not know the vocabulary that they need to understand the content. And these are easy ways to demonstrate that. Any comments, any questions, any suggestions, any input? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Now we're going to, we talked about a couple of things. Now we're going to
Ooh, sorry.
look. We go. Oh, okay.
Is that wrong?
No, you're fine. You're fine. So this is a big, there's a huge discussion surrounding to translate or not. And I've provided a flow chart to help you decide when you should translate. Oftentimes, a translation is given to a student and the student may not even be able to read in their own language. So we have to be careful when we're translating things, and sometimes the translation isn't correct. So we want to give students the vocabulary in English. So look at the flow chart. Start here. Is your student a newcomer? Yes, the student is a newcomer, meaning they're new to the country, first time in an American school. Is the basic information or vocabulary to help them understand English? Yes, translate it. But this doesn't mean translate entire documents. This is just the vocabulary that they need to understand the task at hand, okay? If the student is not a newcomer, is it an assignment all students are receiving? Don't translate it, just scaffold the material. Okay, with pictures and vocabulary. So you can follow that flow chart. Let's just take a moment to look at that flow chart, and I want you to, if you have any questions, please ask. So it's helpful. Okay, good. I'm glad that was helpful for you.
Well, and I'm just gonna
Mhm.
say it. I like that you clarified, because I get requests to translate entire chapters, and that's not necessarily where we are, but like what you're saying, I like what you're saying, vocab needed to understand the task.
Right, right. And there are so many resources out there, and I'm discovering them every day, especially the AI resources that will simplify the language for you. It will put it in a, because I know students are having to read a lot, and they may not be able to, at that point, if they're a newcomer, they may not be able to read that text at such a high level. So you can use AI tools to simplify the language and highlight relevant vocabulary instead of just translating the entire document, translating entire text. The goal is for our students to learn English. You wouldn't go to Spain or Mexico and you want to learn Spanish and the teacher is teaching you everything in English. You want to learn the Spanish, right? So same thing here. We want to teach our students English, and they will learn English. It's amazing how students grow because they're immersed in the language every day. They hear language, English all day long. So they just need a little time. If you were dropped into a foreign country, you're not going to be able to immediately start speaking that language. It takes a little time to process. It takes a little time to get the vocabulary and just the anxiety of having to speak another language. I learned Spanish, and at first, I understood what was happening, but I was afraid to start speaking in Spanish because I'm like, oh, my pronunciation is terrible, or they're not going to understand. The verb tenses are awful. But with time and building that confidence and people say, even still to this day, oh, you speak really good Spanish. So I'm like, I'm always wanting to speak Spanish. But just encouraging those students that they can do it, they can pronounce, they can repeat the words you say. So, and the pronunciation is not the most important thing. So, any questions about that? Any comments? Okay. Well, let's dive in a little bit with elevation strategies. I believe that's the next slide.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through elevation strategies first. The instructions are here, but I think it's important that you see it in action, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to go through it yourself and look for strategies that you can see modeled in elevation. So you go to your Google, yes.
I'm going to copy these and put these in the chat.
Okay, great idea.
Sorry. And everyone, here we go. And so then I'm going to do what you tell me to do.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, I'm going to my Google. And
All
you
right.
guys follow along too, because this is how we learn. We learn by doing. We're CTE people.
That's right. That's right. So do you see the FCPS folder at the top left corner? Okay, you're going to click that drop down and select Clever. That's the easiest way to get to the Clever portal.
Okay, I'm already logged on.
Okay, if you've not logged on, it'll ask you to log on as a teacher or sign in through your email. You're going to look for the elevation icon. And I think you're already in elevation,
I
but
am, so
it
it
should
won't
be
let me
up at
find.
the top.
Did everybody find it?
Anyone having any trouble?
Working on it.
Okay.
All right.
So you've gone to
Well,
your
Rebecca, your access is probably crazy. Okay.
Clever portal. I'll repeat those instructions, and you're looking for the elevation icon. All right, when you log into your elevation icon, it gives you lots of information on your particular students. So you will see the number of ELs in your classroom, the number of LTELs, and remember LTELs are long-term English learners, and the number of RFEP students. These are students who have exited the program. If you scroll down, you will see the composite level. Remember I said that 4.5 is an exited score, but you will see the average composite composite score of each of your students. The home language is represented from your students. And at the bottom, you've got the listening, speaking, reading, and writing levels of your students. So you can always go back and look at that. But at the very top, it gives lots of information. It's such a valuable tool. At the top, you will see students, forms, reports, and strategies. I'd like for you to click strategies.
Can I get a show of hands? Who is this the first? Is this your first time in this? Me. Okay. Okay. Just me. Good. That's a good sign.
Okay, wonderful. So this is the homepage of Elevation Strategies. So there's an icon with pathways and modules and activities. For the purpose of today, we're going to go to activities. You can always go back to modules and pathways because you can learn about different ways you can support your English learners in a professional development module that's listed there. So do you see the language domain? We're going to look at one particular strategy, language domain, and let's select writing. Okay, and you see grade level. So we can filter this out because there are over 108 activities. Let's select high school 9, 10, 11 to 12. Then I'd like for you to go to language example, and I want you to select describe characteristics. And that pares that down to 6 activities available. Scroll down and click on the Windows writing or the writing window strategy. Yes. So what I love about this is that oftentimes people tell you what you can do. Here, they show you what you can do, and they lay it out in great detail. So if you would click on the video for me quickly.
Uh-oh. I gotta get hold on. Pause, please.
It's okay.
If there's no sound.
I don't know why it's no sound.
It's because I don't have it set up on the Zoom.
It's okay. I'll explain it because I'm going to give you an opportunity to share, to look through it on your own, and then you'll be able to hear the videos. Okay, if you can
Get out of it.
Yes.
All right.
So what it does, if you scroll down, it shows you how to use it. So it provides lots of detail on how to use that strategy. The writing window strategy is where students are provided with the visual, they talk about the visual, and they write about it. Okay. And if you scroll up some more, scroll up.
Oh, up.
So look at where it says language example. So in this particular, it's the language example is to narrate, to connect images. Can scroll down a little bit more. And so it gives you details on, because remember, we're trying to grow their language in speaking, reading, writing, and listening. So this is geared towards those areas, but can be tailored to your needs in your classroom. Because in your classroom, you're having students to read, you're having students to write, they have to listen, and they have to speak. So that explains those language uses. If you can scroll back up for me. I want you to click on, not all the way up, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So
sorry.
we're going to scroll down. Yes. So I want you to look at differentiation there. All right, this is where you can view your student data. So you've got students that might need a little bit more support than other students. So it gives you an example: high support students that are more likely your newcomers, provide sentence frames and a list of signal transition words for the writing activity, the moderate support and the light support. But do you see where it says view student data? Uh-oh.
Can you see it? Oops. I don't know what, there we go. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, view student data. So you'll be able to see, you could click on view student data. So you'll
Wow.
be able to see those students who need that tailored support. Click on view, view student data. I think you already have the window
I
open.
think
Yes.
it's open. Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
Can everybody give me a thumbs up to make sure that you're following me there?
Got it.
Okay, good. All right, so you can see those students who need the writing support. If they need high writing support, they're levels 1 and 2. Moderate support, level 3. Moderate writing support, they're a level 4. So it shows you, you don't have to guess. Okay, it's all there for you. So if you can go back to the tab for me, I'm going to show you one other thing that it does. Look at the graphic organizers. This is another thing I absolutely love about this. Is that the graphic organizer that the students were using in the video, you can download those graphic organizers and you can change them to suit your needs. Okay, click on that. Make a copy.
Woo.
Yes, so the graphic organizers are connected to the strategy. So you have a video, you can see the differentiation, you can also see use the graphic organizers, change them as you see fit. Notice there are sentence frames at the bottom.
Hmm.
Good, thumbs up, that's good. All right. All right, so if you would go.
Back. Okay.
All right, so what I'd like for you to do is take a moment. Let's take about 5 minutes. And I'd like for you to explore an elevation strategy and come back and write a strategy that you found, name the strategy in the chat.
Mm.
I do want to say something else about elevation strategies as you're exploring. The idea is that you bring the content, they bring the strategy. So you all have all the content knowledge of CTE in the area in which you teach, and you're professional in that. You know that area, but sometimes it's a challenging figuring out how you want to deliver it. So elevation is there for you to tailor your instruction to the students in your classroom.
You were reading my mind. Because when I look at the sticky thinking, the example it's giving is that, right, the children are going to compare two children in an informational text, but we can most definitely use it in CTE to compare two different theories, or compare two different processes, or to compare, whatever it is we're learning about in our pathway. So we have to get creative, and maybe that's something as a CTE team, we maybe make connections to these strategies to actual CTE examples to help our CTE folks see it. We like to see it, feel it. I don't know, what are y'all's thoughts? Yeah.
Well, the sentence starters for discussion and writing, yes. The sentence starters are powerful. How many times have you had to write something and you don't know where to start? You don't know your first sentence. So the sentence starter kind of takes that pressure away. It takes that anxiety away of trying to figure out how to start. Where do I begin?
I think too, with the sentence starters, it's important to consider that not all languages is organized the way that ours is. The subject and verb could be flipped in their language. And so having that sentence starter helps them. They're maybe afraid that they're going to say it incorrectly, but having the sentence starter helps them at least put it in the right format.
Right.
And that's less confusing, I guess.
The sentence starters too are not only just for written languages, for oral language. If students need to understand a process of something, teaching them how to say, okay, first you need to do X, Y, and Z, or if they have to create something, knowing what to say in a situation is helpful as well. And having them practice, I can't stress that enough. Having students verbally practice the language. Okay, let's see what we have in the chat here. Double vision for intro to media arts. Okay. You want to talk about that one?
It talks about having the students watch a video clip in 2 different ways. And you could do this in a couple of different classes. It just kind of caught my attention because it was video based. But they watch the video and they try to predict what, with no sound first, and they try to predict what is actually going on. And then the second time they watch it with the sound, and then what was the difference between the two.
Yeah, I like that. See, they have lots of strategies that I haven't explored all of them. And so I learned a lot from having teachers explore them and talk about how they can use them in their classes. I like the reader, reporter, announcer activity. It's great that every member of the group has a clear role and responsibility. How often do we put students in groups, and usually there's one person that sort of takes over, but giving them a role and a responsibility allows everyone to take responsibility for learning. Okay.
It makes it clear to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just playing now.
Okay. Are there any questions Any burning thoughts that you'd like to share? I encourage you to continue to explore different strategies that you can use for your English learners and share. We don't have to do this alone. Share with your colleagues different things that have worked in your classroom, different things that you found interesting and engaging for your students. We have to continue to have those conversations, because sometimes as teachers, we feel like we're on an island alone, but we don't have to be. To find out what works and work together, and so we can support our students, all of our students.
I love this. I'm excited to dig in more.
I would just say that on the looking at the double vision activity, that one was specific to video, but something that I found useful when I was teaching, like the history of healthcare, each student is allowed to take a particular notable person and research them and tell their story, you know, what they discovered and why it's important. And so one of the things that I found helpful for my EL students was, once I figured out which people they were particularly interested in, was to look to see if I could find children's books on those people. Not because they're, you know, but they're illustrated. So there was pictures of things. And then there was also, the language was much more simplified in those than it would be in like a scholarly article on the internet or something. So that, I think that anytime you can incorporate pictures, it's a good thing.
Right. Pictures are what, you know, the expression, what pictures worth 1,000 words. And so using that visual, it kind of jogs their thinking of, okay, what's going on? And they're thinking of vocabulary in their language, but when we provide the vocabulary in English, that opens it up for them, completely opens it up for the student.
So we have a few more minutes, and I know, Fitz, you've been sharing, but we wanted to highlight you also because of the work that you have been focusing on with this. And is there any other things that you're doing specifically that you would like to share or feature at Tate's Creek?
One of the things, for those of you that don't know, I did the EL certification or the EL endorsement thing last year, just because I did find that I needed more help in my classroom, and I thought, well, I'm just going to help myself. So anywho, it was a very eye-opening experience. And those of you that came to my session at the beginning of school, I shared that it not only helped my EL students, but it was helpful for all of my students, because we have so many students that have struggled with learning. And so these strategies work for such a variety. I saw a huge difference in the number of students who were failing my courses just by incorporating these strategies for my students. So that's been awesome. One of the things that I'm playing with more this year is how I do my grouping, because I do a lot of group work, because in healthcare, it's a team player, and teamwork is like big employability skills that we are supposed to incorporate in our classrooms. And the best way to do it, to teach it, is to let them practice it. So we do tons of partner work and group work. So I've been experimenting with how I can intentionally group these students to push a little bit, because what I learned last year is that part of the theory of language development is, if there is a reason for the language learning, it's not just some academic exercise, but they're actually going to learn something they can use, that their development of language will increase dramatically. And since we're in CTE classrooms and we're teaching them to do things, that's going to make us a very valuable resource for them to develop their language skills. So one of the things I've done this year is to try to change up, instead of putting like all my Hispanic people in one group and all my Arabic people in one group. And so I've mixed it up some And they have already learned through their resource teachers to use Google Translate. So they're communicating better with each other than you would think. And then when you throw in some of the students who've not had any of that EL resource training, students that are native English speakers, they're having to learn to use Google Translate, but they're also learning more about people who are different from them. And it has really changed the dynamics of how my students get along in class. And so now you don't see so much of people clustering into their little homogenous groups. Now they're mixed more because they've had a chance to interact more. And I actually got the idea for this in the spring semester of last year because I had a student who came into my classroom who was from Brazil, and she was the only student from Brazil. And it was like, I was worried for her, thinking, who is she going to talk to? She's going to be so isolated. But within just a few weeks, she was walking down the hall arm in arm with 3 girls, and they were all laughing and giggling. I thought, kids find a way. And so if we put them in groups to make them get to know each other and make them work together, they will, it's not only going to help our EL students increase their language abilities, but it's also going to bring some empathy and awareness to the native English speakers to have more understanding for people who are different from them. And I found that to be particularly valuable this year. So I'm doing that quite a bit. And just the strategies that I've been using all along, but I'm definitely wanting to use some of the things from the elevation. I'll be honest and say I had not played with that overly much. But I definitely see it's always great when you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? When it's
Right.
already there and you can just grab it and go with it. So I'm excited to delve more into that too.
I do want to shout out to Patty, like, before we had the elevation and all the things, and somebody would ask me, how do I do this for my EL people? I'd be like, let me ask Patty. And she would most graciously either help the teacher figure it out or help me figure it out. And that's just a great example of how we are, all these kids are our kids, and we're all one kind of big CTE PLC. So I truly appreciate that.
Well, coming from a healthcare standpoint, we always tell kids, like when we're teaching them first aid and we're teaching them CPR, you know, doing something is better than doing nothing. So
Right.
trying something, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first, it's better than not acknowledging them at all. And
Yeah.
it just, you get more comfortable the more you try and do. And like I said, you'll be surprised how much your entire class community will kind of rise too. They say when you raise the water, the boat rises too. So
Mhm.
let's raise the
Mhm.
waters, get everybody moving forward to a little understanding.
Perfect. I know we're getting kicked out of here soon, right, Amanda?
5 o'clock.
Okay, so we're probably going to cut off a little early. These are just some of the questions that came to me. Is there an easy way to get to Clutter? Check, you did it. Should we translate everything? That was answered. Check. And then EOP cert accommodations. We have accommodations. They're listed on this link, which you guys will get the slides and the follow-up and the video and all the groovy things. But you know, again, they're going to be the industry, they're going to be using that language. So again, we want to use that language, but there are, like EOP, they can use a dictionary and those sorts of things. So you can kind of look through there, and you can also look at all the different certifications. There are some accommodations, but
I do want to add that if they're using, because students use the dictionaries, have them use it in class. Google Translate is great, but if they don't know how to use the dictionary, then having the dictionary on the certification test may not do them any well if they don't know how to use it.
perfect, brilliant.
Yeah.
Check with your media center, because I know for me the big challenge was finding those dictionaries, and even like our resource teachers only had a few, and it was hard to get those sometimes. But sometimes you could find one in the media center or something like that. So I think I have 3 that I have ended up with keeping in my room that are my most common. But we
All
can,
of your EL teachers have bilingual dictionaries.
There you go.
All
Sounds
of your
like some state CTE funds could be used.
Oh, girl. Why not?
And even if we just had like we're an academy school, so I'm thinking out loud here, but even if we just had a set per academy, that we shared amongst all the teachers, it would still be better than have nothing.
Mhm.
I want to give a special shout out to Rose and Latanza for their collaboration for creating this presentation and this video recording so that we can make sure that everyone who wasn't present today can view it on their own time. I love the resources. I appreciate the examples. I also admittedly had not been in that platform, so I appreciate the walkthrough in that. And if we have any additional questions, I know without asking that you'll be happy to assist in any and help us in answering those questions. So I appreciate that. And Rachel, as always, thank you for taking us through the PowerPoint and putting the sign in and parking lot in the chat. I have already put the PowerPoint on the CTE staff portal. It's actually in a couple of places there. I think you can find it under CTE communication and then also under the professional learning part. And as soon as this video downloads, I will also add the video recording to that. Thank you for everyone who participated. Oh, and a special shout out to Patty for sharing her resources and strategies as well.
Yes, and you lead. I see you here. Share it with your friends. Share it with your teacher friends. This is good stuff. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Rachel and Amanda, I think we have like 1 minute. Can you stay so we can just have in Latanza? I don't know who's here.
Bye.
Yes, we are
Okay.
going to get kicked out in 4 minutes.
I just need 2 minutes.
Yeah. Miss Devatore, are you still here?
How do we kick him out?
I'll remove her. She's fine. She's probably. Oops.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Good. So, thank you, Latanza. This was all Latanza. Thank you. I don't know if she's still here because I'm on my phone and I cannot see what I'm thinking, Rachel, and I don't know, Christina.